In today's Farm Report, December 1st will be the scheduled date for the start of a general sign-up for the USDA's Conservation Reserve Program, also known as CRP. Rod Bain with the USDA has more.
Coming up towards the end of this year, the start of the latest general sign-up for USDA's Conservation Reserve Program.
It'll run for about 3 months from December 1 through February 26 of next year.
And the administrator of USDA's Farm Service Agency, Val Docini, says this is the first scheduled general sign-up for CRP since 2013.
The big CRP contracts that are included in the general sign-up typically are 10 to 15 years long and will pay a farmer a going rental rate for that area for him to enroll his land in CRP and set that land aside, not use it as a working agricultural tool.
Under the upcoming sign-up, an additional 800,000 acres of highly sensitive environmental lands will be eligible for CRP enrollment. The general sign-up is part of an emphasis on CRP in 2015, the 30th anniversary of the Conservation Reserve Program.
It's been very successful for the last 30 years. We've seen over 170,000 miles of streams and creeks being protected. We've sequestered millions of tons of carbon. We've prevented more than 8 billion tons of soil from eroding. So it's had a variety of important environmental benefits that not only protect these working lands, but really protect our society as a whole.
The general sign-up comes on the heels of expansion of several continuous CRP enrollment programs in 2015, as well as a one-year contract extension offer at the end of September for those CRP enrollees with expiring contracts. Docini says no matter how a landowner wishes to enroll in the Conservation Reserve Program,
the first step in all of these cases would be for a farmer or rancher to contact their local FSA office, and if they're a current contract holder, they know what the process will be like. If they're interested in learning more about some of these continuous practices or whether their land might be eligible for duck nesting habitat or wetlands restoration or other things, folks there in the FSA county office can help them answer those questions.
In addition to the local FSA office, more information about the Conservation Reserve Program can be found online at www.fsa.usda.gov/conservation. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
Football Super Bowl is usually played on neutral, warmer weather fields, but
baseball World Series is played in the home stadium, so you're kind of at the mercy of the elements.
And Agriculture Department meteorologist Brad Rippey says the elements have played a part in many World Series games. They call baseball players, the boys of summer, but let's go back to the 97 series, Game 3, Cleveland Indians against the Florida Marlins.
Game time temperature was 38 degrees.
Coldest World Series game ever, at least so far. And of course, there's the 79 series in Baltimore against the Pittsburgh Pirates, Game 1.
We saw snow falling during the game in Baltimore.
And then 10 years later,
Candlestick Park, Game 3 of the 1989 World Series. So the Oakland A's take. I'll tell you what, we have an earthquake.
The San Francisco earthquake causing the largest ever delay of a World Series, 10 days. So Brad Rippey says nature can be a factor in baseball.
Every day that you push back a game, that can reset the pitching rotations and really change history.
In Washington, Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
The 2014 Farm Bill issued in some new crop insurance options for producers, and those options are being expanded for 2016 with 2 new additions for crops and counties covered by these offerings: the supplemental coverage option and the actual production history yield exclusion. Rod Bain with the U.S. Department of Agriculture has more.
When the Farm Bill was passed, our goal at the Risk Management Agency was to have these new programs and these new options available to farmers as quickly and as widely as we could.
What USDA Risk Management Agency Administrator Brandon Willis is referring to is 2 programs connected to the 2014 Farm Bill: Supplemental Coverage Option and Actual Production History Yield Exclusion. In the case of both options, coverage is determined by both county and crop eligibility, something that recently was expanded from the initial announcement earlier this summer.
What we've been doing is slowly announcing different crops in different counties. What we're announcing is 13 additional crops for APH yield exclusion. The other part is supplemental coverage option. We're announcing 25 new crops for supplemental coverage option.
So for both SCO and APH yield exclusion, many of the same crops are now covered under this most recent announcement. Crops ranging from sweet corn and cucumbers to buckwheat and pumpkins.
There are a lot of similarities between the crops that are available for supplemental coverage option and for APH yield exclusion. There's a few more available for supplemental coverage option simply because we have more information that allows us to do that. But yeah, they're very similar crops.
And in the instances for both programs, the coverage of crops and counties in this recent announcement begins in the 2016 crop year. Yet SCO and APH yield exclusion have some differences. Supplemental coverage option is a crop insurance area-based policy endorsement that goes along with an underlying policy. Actual production history yield exclusion, on the other hand, is an additional flexibility for establishing yields needed to establish crop insurance coverage.
What it does is it allows farmers who grow a crop in a county that had a major disaster and lost, the county lost over 50% of their crop. It allows them to drop those historically bad years, which allows them to have, in turn, better insurance coverage.
Administrator Willis adds there could be additional SCO and APH yield exclusion announcements before year's end. He encourages producers to visit with their local crop insurance agent and learn more about the programs at RMA's website,
www.rma.usda.gov.
The website contains online tools for producers to determine appropriate crop insurance coverage and to locate eligible SCO and APH yield exclusion crops and counties. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
There's nothing like an open weather week and the threat of some very wet weather to come to speed up field work, and so
we continue to see a very torrid pace of corn and soybean harvesting.
Agriculture Department meteorologist Brad Rippey says corn growers now have 75% of the corn in the bin.
That's 7 percentage points ahead of the 5-year average and dramatically ahead of last year's 44%. We see the corn harvest number substantially ahead of average in a number of states. In Ohio, for example, 76% harvested, 5-year average just 46%.
And for soybeans, 87% nationally already harvested.
80% is the 5-year average, 68% at this time last year.
And again, Ohio producers really cranking up the bean harvest this past week, so they have
93% harvested, 67% is the 5-year average.
In Washington, Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.